first thing I did when I researched this talk was to look up the word will in the dictionary. That's always a good start, right? So, according to the dictionary, will is the faculty of conscious and especially deliberate action, the power of control the mind has over its actions. It is the power of choosing one's own actions. It is the act or process of using or asserting one's choice. It is a wish or a desire. It is purpose or determination, often hardy or stubborn determination, a willfulness. It is the wish or purpose as carried out or to be carried out. Charles Fillmore stated that the development of will is possible only through the development of the mind as a whole. And as the man is the mind, the will is the man. Now, it is common to think that willpower is very much steeped in reality. What does it mean to be realistic? To have both feet on the ground? Is it that what we're talking about here? Sometimes, being realistic is a term pessimists use to keep themselves down. Down, on the ground, no elevation. But as much as grounding is an important tool, I think that striving for balance is also just as important. In contrast to grounding, building castles in the sky may be considered foolish. Is it though? Taking a look back at the history of humanity, we can see a great striving for better life, a strong focus on the physical, on the things that could be understood by using physical calculations. The things not understood used to be in the realms of gods, and people had no business being godlike. Humanity had been so worried about reality that they forgot they are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. We live in an outcome-oriented society. We work hard for what we imagine is a probable achievement. Often, it is what others imagine for us. It's realistic and attainable. But how much personal strength can go into a thing that didn't come from within us, but from expectations that others have of us? Recently, I was listening to a podcast by Mary Mann and Morrissey. And in this podcast, she tells this wonderful story about two fishermen. On the river shore, there were two fishermen, a young fisherman and an old one. And as the day wore on, the young fisherman kept watching the older one and noticed that he was doing something strange. Every time he would pull up a fish, he would put it down on the ground against this broken off ruler that he had. And if the fish was bigger than the ruler, he would throw it back. So the young man started wondering, well, what is it about the bigger fish? Do they get bony or something? Finally, he couldn't hold it anymore. He went up to the old fisherman and he said, buddy, I couldn't help but notice that every time you pull out a fish, you put it up against this old ruler and you throw out the bigger ones. What is it? Do they get bony or something? The old fisherman said, buddy, do you see that broken off ruler I got there? Do you see that there? That ruler was broken off exactly the size of my frying pan. Isn't that what we do with our dreams? We're making sure that they fit the frying pan that we currently own. What would happen if we suspended our disbelief in real life, not just when watching movies? What would happen if we stopped believing in our own limitations? As we approach the 30th anniversary of the Terry Fox run, I am reminded of a human that did not believe in his own very realistic limitations. he reached out. He refused to listen to reason, to the people that wanted him to be realistic about his abilities. Now today, that man lives on, years after leaving that plane of existence. His visit is remembered with reverence. His feat is continually inspiring countless others to reach for the stars and attempt that what is impossible. What would happen if we suspended our disbelief and allowed the impossible to enter our realm of reality? Now, a practice I developed in my life is that if something seems truly impossible for me to achieve, I sit on the fence about it. I don't stay in reality down on the ground. I'm just above the ground, not far to fall, but not really down. And I stay there. I make no commitment to either side. It keeps me just a touch closer to floating than to being on the ground. And when something that seems impossible, I find that I really, really want, I lean just a little bit to the side that appeals to me. I imagine it being possible. I really get into the fantasy. I build the castle in the sky. Then, all I do is take one small step toward that reality. You never know what might happen. I allow for the possibility. Allow is another thing I looked up in the dictionary. That was also interesting. Allow is to give permission to or for, to permit. To let, have, give as one's share, grant as one's right. What would happen if we allowed something to be granted as our right, something that we want? It is to permit by neglect, oversight, or the like. What would happen if we neglected to think about our limitations and allowed for something different to happen? It is to admit, acknowledge, or concede. What if we admitted our passions, acknowledged what we've always wanted to do? It is to take into consideration as by adding or subtracting, to set apart. What else can we take into consideration every day? If we are so busy with what has always been, with what we have always had, if we're so busy doing what we have always done, how can we allow anything new to happen in our lives? How can we follow our passion? To follow our passion, we need to practice the art of balancing action and allowing ourselves to slow down, to wait. You might ask, what does waiting have to do with willpower? Well, I think it has a lot to do with willpower. It takes willpower to wait, as it takes willpower to do. We are striving for balance. Balance between the small step and the art of waiting. In our world, we use our strong will to do many things. We're all wrapped up in doing that we run out of time for anything else. This is our using the faculty of will in the do realm. What about the be realm? The wise people say that you first need to be, then you have to do, in order to finally have what you strive towards. Part of the be energy is to make peace with the things as they are right now, to allow consideration for what could be. Being is infinitely harder than doing for human beings. While you truly deeply usefully be, it's not the same as ignoring. When you ignore, you forget. When you practice being. You mentally prepare for what's to come. You process. We mold ourselves to our future, our imagined reality. And that's how we manifest. When I was invited to apply for coaching school, I struggled with trying this concept on for size. I had all these feelings: inadequacy, financial unreadiness, psychological unreadiness. And then a wise friend of mine said, all you have to do is apply. All I have to do is apply. Well, that's not so hard. I don't have to commit to the school. I don't have to commit to the dream. All I can do is just apply. I can afford that. So I applied. And then they accepted me. Go figure. And at first, when I first joined coaching school, I couldn't even say it. I couldn't say, I'm a coach. Our teachers said, go out and tell people you're a coach. What? They said you have to be first. Well, how can I say I'm a coach where I'm obviously not? But I knew that this was the way I could change the world. And this is what I ultimately wanted to do. I wanted to change the world. I mean, that's a small dream I have. So I kept that in my awareness. I took very small steps, always keeping in my awareness that this is the possibility that would allow me the next step and the next step. And after all, somebody invited me to do this. So probably it came from God, right? So even when I felt like a fraud, I kept on. I kept thinking it, I kept saying it, I kept telling people it. And without money, without degree, without experience, I forced myself to experience being a coach. Now I am a certified professional coach. I am an educated, committed, certified, and experienced coach. Yet so many times it seemed impossible. And I reached towards my dreams despite thinking that my arms were too short. I suspended my disbelief and have achieved my dream, one of them. So now I have a story to tell you guys. I don't know how much you know about the geography of Poland, but I'm from Poland, so this is a Polish legend. Through Poland, from the very south to the very north of the Baltic Sea, flows a great big river. It starts small, but it gets bigger. And about halfway down this river, thousands of years ago, probably more than 3,000 years ago, there were two little villages, each one on the opposite shore of the river. And these villages had a feud going on. Since the oldest people could remember, they were not friends. These villages, the people in these two villages, even though they could see each other across the river, they wouldn't even talk to each other. In these two villages, there were two young people. In one of these villages, there was a man called Bas. And in the other village was a lady named Sava. And as these young people would go down to the river to fish, to do their laundry, to gather water, they would often see each other on the other opposite shore. And they kept having this interest, that feeling toward each other. Over time, that feeling grew into love. They fell in love with each other. So, after a while, Bars and Sava decided that they were going to go and tell their parents that they're in love with each other and ask for the blessing to get married. They went to their parents, and of course, the old people of the villages said, absolutely not. You will not have anything to do with the people from the opposite village. We have a feud, and we respect what our elders have always done. We will not do anything different. Now, go back. We already have somebody picked for you from our own village, and this is the last of it. I will not hear any more of this. You will not ever talk to that person from the... Why would you even talk to the person from the other village? That is just wrong. So the young people, in desperation, ran down to the river's edge with tears flowing down their face. They ran down and they looked at each other across the shore, knowing that their dream was impossible. Their hearts were broken as they reached out towards each other. And as they reached out towards each other, a miracle happened. Their arms grew. Their arms grew long enough so that they could grasp each other's hands across the big river. And they stood there holding each other's arms with tears flowing down their faces. And they weren't letting go of their impossible love, their impossible dream. Moments passed, and the villagers noticed something was off on the river shore. A great crowd gathered, and they all looked upon the two young people holding on to each other. And over moments, the villagers understood. They realized that love is here to change things. They realized that they didn't need to do everything that their forefathers did. They could change things. All the villagers together decided that they were going to start building a bridge. They started building a bridge across the river to connect the two villages. Now, where the villages stood thousands of years ago, there's a big city. And even though no one remembers what the villages were called then, now that city is called Warszawa, or Warsaw. It's the capital of Poland, and is named after the two young people, Vas and Sava. Their names were put together to name this beautiful city. It's one of the biggest cities in Poland. And all thanks to those two young people, thousands of years ago, not giving up on their love. So what is it that we allow into our lives? Do we allow dreams? Do we allow passion? Do we allow them to enter, or do we allow them to be postponed? Do we allow them to pass? What would happen if we stepped into that reality with power? What would happen if we tuned ourselves to match our dreams? An instrument out of tune seems like it could not play the melody well. Yet, after some tuning, it becomes the perfect thing for the job.